Welcome to the Hewson and Rowe podcast. I'm Dorothy Rowe, and I'm here with Andrew Hewson, and it's our joy and pleasure to share various topics on spiritual subjects and subjects related to evolution and development. And, I work mostly as an energy healer, so also bringing in some energy healing there. Andrew is a wonderful speaker and has deep, deep experiences that always come through with the most profound and stable foundation of silence. So I hope you really like our talk tonight. We're talking tonight about the blossoming of full potential, which is a great topic. It's a topic that something that relates to everybody, applies to everybody, and gives us an opportunity to join with you and share with you how we all actually, the fine mechanics of how do we unfold and unfurl our full potential and what that even means. What is full potential? So it's a very rich and yummy topic, and I hope you all enjoy it. I think I'll let Andrew take it from here. Hey, Andrew.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Dorothy. Beautiful.
Tell us a little bit about this topic.
Yeah. So blossoming our full potential. It would seem like that's something that is sort of decided per the individual, what I feel like my potential is. But in the way that we're approaching it and the way we're speaking about it, we're speaking about it from the universal level. What is the fullest potential of us as walking universes, as the totality appearing condensated in a given body and mind? And in this sense, what we're really talking about is the realization of our true nature and our infinite, limitless, boundless field of existence, and then how that expresses itself within the field of form and within the field of activity. So I feel like when we're looking at this, instead of looking at it within the realm of particular specific preferences, we can look at it in more of a general sense. And then, of course, for each and every one, that's going to show up differently. It's going to include specific preferences. It's going to include specialties and abilities and all of those different things. But in this sense, it's something that we're sharing in. So your highest potential is my highest potential, and our highest potential is our highest potential. It's not something that is so defined to a given being, if you will. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, thanks. That was a beautiful introduction of what the highest potential is. My experience is that the infinite, eternal, silent source of creation is a field of absolute potential, and that each individual's experience of their own pure potential is born of that. And so the purest level, the most potent level of personal potential is experienced at the very initial sproutings from that source field into the stratified layering of manifest self. So if we look at that as a stratification, we look down at that very, very finest level, that's where we see the purest, most, we could say concentrated, most robust qualities or values of each individual's potential. So Andrew, when you say that your potential is my potential and our potential is the same, really at that level of the physiology, we share the same physiology. That deepest, most abstract, just like one layer, just the skin on the outermost layer of the absolute, is that part of ourselves is universal, and it's shared by everyone collectively. So when pure potential when the potential of the being, of divine being shows up there, it shows up basically the same for everyone. And when I look at it, to me, it's such a radiant light. It's such a beautiful, sweet, pure, purest of the pure quality of the expression of complete fulfillment, which is the nature of the unbounded, infinite, eternal field of being. So that deepest fulfillment, that complete absolute fulfillment, takes its like first expression at the finest level of creation. And right there, we all share that feeling. It's if any of you guys out there are moms or dads, you know when that baby first arrives, you look at this baby and it's like the life hasn't unfolded yet. But you look at the baby and it's just a tiny little thing, but you realize the baby could be anything, could be anything. And so there's kind of, in a way, it's the responsibility of the parents to protect and cultivate and support that vision that they have of the baby. It's very, when the baby first arrives, it's that pure potential is in a very kind of, it's in a very accessible form. You see it, you literally see it when you look at them. And so, you know, the parent's job is to provide the resources to allow that full potential to evolve forward and to become whatever it wants to become.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. As you're describing that, I'm just sort of seeing the different levels of potential, and there's the level of what we could call qualityless potential. So that's potential
Right.
without qualities, without attributes, attributeless, total absence with a capital A potential. And in that, we might say there's this emergence of pure potentiality that is qualitative potentiality.
Mm,
It's the
right.
potentiality of dimensionality,
Mm,
of experiencing.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so, and these are running, you might say, simultaneously.
Oh, yeah.
So in that simultaneous running, excuse me, in that simultaneous running, we then see this unique possibility or conglomeration of the vibratory qualitative distinctions begin to appear and express itself. And in that, what we're witnessing is really the flowering forth of uh, impressions, at least at this stage in our development. So this can be seen as karma, which is what really our bodies are made out of, you might say, in a certain sense. They're
Yeah.
made out of karma. At the same time, they're made out of infinite conscious awareness. They are the expression of this totality, but they're also the expression of a certain package of impressions. So that package of impressions has a certain potential. It has certain probabilities, certain likelihoods, a certain direction, we might say, that's already built into its structure. Not that it's predetermined, but that there is just a general sort of, how would you say, probability is the best word. There's a general probability that it's going to grow this way and flow this way, with, also possibility for variation in that. And this is where we see the intelligence of birth charts and those kinds of things. They're able to sort of look at the package
Right.
and discern the trajectory. That's a good word,
Yeah.
trajectory. It has a certain general trajectory, right?
That was the word
So
I
we
was
can,
going to pronounce, but you
yeah, that's
good.
perfect. Yeah, so that's kind of, it's like that. And so this infinite potentiality of infinite dimensionality appears, progressively manifested in the field of form within the context of this package of possibilities within a given general trajectory.
Mhm.
And at the same time, this package is not something that is innately limiting. There's the potential for the package to be utilized in the direction of moving beyond the self-definition in the impressions.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So in other words, the trajectory can be modified
Mm-hmm.
and refined
Mm-hmm.
and adapted to suit whatever level of consciousness the individual is living at any point in their process. Because I think, and I see this in my work, my healing work a lot, Andrew and everybody, that a lot of times the soul, and folks out there who are listening to this podcast, we'd love to hear your impressions if you've had experiences like this. But sometimes the soul comes into this life with a kind of package of choices
Mm-hmm.
that they've made, certain lessons they want to learn or certain things that they want to accomplish. And if they aim for the long-term goals, rather than going for like short-term fulfillment, but they kind of aim themselves more toward the long-term goals, what happens is the nature of behavior and thought and speech, all action, all that tends to be in a more refined alignment, we could say, more refined alignment with cosmic intention, because the cosmos are so ancient, so eternal, right? So when we aim for the long-term goals, we kind of line ourselves up a little bit more precisely with our cosmic nature. And as a result, a lot of times I find people end up reaching their goals early. And especially if they're like really spiritually oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have to go back and reassess. A lot of times the problems that people bring to me in this energy healing circles are problems related to the fact that they completed some karma that they thought maybe they were going to spend their whole life working on that thing. And instead they completed it quite early. And then all of a sudden it puts them in this place where they don't really know where they're going to move next because they hadn't made a plan, or they completed the karma and there's still some like little flavors of that action still hanging on. And so, once a person realizes, oh, well, actually I completed that karma, I don't have to go through that particular suffering anymore because I've learned the lesson. Then it's easy to let go of whatever that suffering is.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else, but I can't think of it. If you have anything to say, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's a beautiful point, because sometimes it could seem like if we recognize that there is a certain package and there is a certain presentation of impressions and a certain degree of probability and likelihood, it could be seen as sort of a burden or something that is fixed. And it's not like that. At the same time, to
Right.
not acknowledge it isn't the most helpful either, because when we speak about this infinite field of possibilities, if we don't understand that there are already innate tendencies and proclivities and things that are more or less aligned and lessons to be learned.
Say responsibility to ancestors too, because we come in with these bodies and the ancestors are responsible for the way the body comes in. So there's a certain amount of those pre or organized activities that are kind of related to ancestral, I would say, the trajectory of evolution through the ancestry, because certain lessons start way back and they're actually worked on by one generation after another. So some of the lessons are personal lessons, but some of the lessons are collective lessons, both from the ancestry and from the collective consciousness. I mean, the time that we're in right now, I think, is a really good example of that.
It is.
Because we're working through some really heavy, really intense collective lessons right now. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's an excellent point, that there's so many, it's just this interconnected web, with so many different touch points and connection points. And it's not necessary to know or see them all, because we're going to encounter the ones that are relevant for us in the flow of daily life and in what's appearing in our experience. And just having a little bit of discernment enables us to see when that is taking place. And then in that, we can begin to discover some recognition of how this relates, how this relates to a larger sort of body of impressions, if you will, and whether that's ancestral or what's something that's appearing in the current collective, whether it's gender based impressions, whether, there's so many different things. And in terms of this, understanding possibility and potentiality, if we have this understanding, then we don't approach this with this kind of no rules, no regulations, you can do whatever you want kind of attitude, which is, there's some kind of pseudo spiritual presentations of that going on in the marketplace right now. And it's, it's not always the most helpful thing because it's not exactly accurate. It doesn't include the recognition of karma. It doesn't include the recognition of dharma. So it's basically saying you just pick and you can do whatever you want, and it's kind of becomes centered around the idea of success within a current societal complex and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Like sort of conditioned definition of success.
Correct.
Right, which, as we know, we're coming out of this period where the definition of success is built very much, it sort of centers around material success.
Yes.
And it hasn't been holistic really fully. And the other thing that you're saying is reminding me is that one of the values of having some appreciation of boundaries is that it supports the individual to focus their attention in the most efficient manner. Because if you have there's just no rules. If you just say, well, there are no rules, then what it means is the time and the moments of and personal energies aren't necessarily spent in the most efficient way, right? Because they're kind of haphazardly here and there. But if there's more of I would say both a broad comprehension and the ability to focus in detail into what's happening in any given moment, then that really helps the individual prioritize how they spend their life energy and how they, where they put the focus, because where we put our focus is a vital component of how well we're able to align with that cosmic trajectory of evolution and be in a place where the life's goals are fulfilled in the most comfortable and enriching and life-supporting way. There are many, I think maybe in one of our previous talks, Andrew, we talked about how there's so many different ways that we can evolve, and some of them are really like the royal path. It's elegant, it's dignified, it's comfortable, it's sweet, it's fulfilled. And the other paths will also get you there, but they can be very painful and very uncomfortable. And so we have a choice, but we have to think intelligently. We have to, again, look for those kind of like long-term goals a little bit, like what action am I doing now and how is that going to impact me in 20 years or 30 years or 50 years, rather than, oh, I'm facing this lesson right now, it's really nasty, I think I'll just run away. It's like, well, that is one way to not be uncomfortable by that lesson, but it may not be the way that's going to serve you best in the long term.
Yeah, so many beautiful points there. And something you said just reminded me in as you were reflecting on that comment I made about no rules, this idea of there being no rules, no regulations. There are laws. There are laws of nature. There's destructive laws. There's constructive laws, and there's sustaining laws. There's laws that support a certain way of being and a certain fulfillment of our highest potential. That's what we're talking about, fulfilling our highest potential. So if something is approached from what's kind of like a mixture of what seems to be spirituality and then also the residue of that kind of materialistic understanding of what success is, because right now we're witnessing like a surfacing of the mixture of that, and it's kind of muddy and put together and marketed and those kinds of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a part of our evolution collectively, and we're just passing through a certain stage. At the same time, it's helpful to acknowledge that things are not always as they appear to be on the surface. So if we have this understanding that when we are aligned with our highest potential, there's going to be immense support, that there's going to be immense support, that we're going to feel this guidance, this leading, this direction, which isn't coming or going. It's something that really is steady and continuous
Mm,
in the sense that it's non-different from our very own being. It's non-different from our very own awareness and our very own self. Then when we are approaching the possibilities of life and we feel a flatness, or we feel a struggle, or we feel a sense of not being able to adequately perform or measure up, or move forward, whatever the case may be, then we can really take a step back and observe and examine and see, well, what is this? It may not be that the activity or the direction isn't supported. It may just be that there's residue there
mm,
from our old ways of seeing things and our old ways of defining ourselves in relationship to something. And in that sense, whatever activity arises that shows us residue becomes a fulfillment of our highest potential, because it's an opportunity for
right,
healing.
right. Andrew, that support that you talked about, could we think of it, or I'm just kind of asking if how it might be related to a maturation of conscience.
Hmm.
Because you were saying it's actually, we find that support is part of ourself, you said. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking about that element of conscience, which is kind of like a guide. It's like an inner guide, sort of,
Yeah.
an inner compass. And that as the being evolves, as the individual evolves, the conscience becomes more and more stable and flexible and well-defined. And then there's less of a question of like, well, should I have gone that way or should I go, but it's like conscience is really, it's able to stand in its sort of royal position, so to say, of being that aspect of mind which deserves a free reign,
Hmm.
essentially. Like if one isn't sure, like the conscience says this, but then my friend says that, and maybe I don't know, and then to be able to always defer back to that element, and that element of conscience is trusted as a true expression
Hmm.
of one's deeper wisdom.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. And as you're speaking about conscience, I'm sort of reflecting on intuition
Mm.
and the relationship between those. And I feel like there's a deep similarity there in the way that you're speaking
Right?
about
It's
it.
part of the maturation of conscience,
Yes.
right? The development of intuition, it comes and sort of binds to conscience.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah.
Conscience isn't just telling you what's going on now, but it has that ability to kind of anticipate the evolutionary trajectory.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. And one other point that I'll make is that oftentimes I feel like as human beings, we're confused about what our conscience is. There's
Right.
also an aspect of the ego structure that has been called in psychology the superego, or it's like almost an inner judge or something that is supposed to control or mediate animal instinctual drives and urges, and make sure that we're doing the right thing and staying on track and so on and so forth. But actually, it ends up really being sort of a big limitation, because it
Like authoritative, it becomes sort of self-judging.
yeah, self-judgment, and it's a source of a lot of guilt and self-condemnation and condemnation of others and all kinds of different things. Yeah. So it's important to discern the difference between the conscience and kind of a doubtful, critical, judgmental
Right,
voice in the head, if you will. It doesn't have to show up in that way, but just
right.
processing of experience. The conscience has more of a purity to it, and it's something that has a simplicity and is in alignment with spiritual values and principles like love and truth and kindness and those kinds of things. Yeah.
And I also
So,
feel there's a connection in conscience to universal cues or information.
okay, beautiful. Yeah.
That there's something in when the conscience is functioning in a mature and proper way, that there's a tendency to pick up or recognize those moments when the larger, more cosmic level of self is providing a point of reference for next step of evolution or next step of behavior, or what direction to go next. So conscience is there. It's like being aware. Oh yes, this is part of me, is this whole universal reality. For instance, the other day, it was an odd thing that happened. I'm going to tell a story.
Okay, perfect.
The other day, my husband and I were walking down the street, and in the middle of the road, in the middle of downtown, we were literally on the square downtown, a little mouse ran in front of our path. It was so funny to see a mouse like in the middle of the day, like running like that. And he was running kind of across our path, and he saw us and he went, oh, and then he turned around and he ran in the same direction we were walking. And it was really odd. And I didn't really think too much about it at the time. But the very next day, my daughter's boyfriend came over, and he had this story about how they'd found 8 feral cats in the dumpster outside their house. And this morning I woke up and I realized, wait a minute, those cats weren't after the trash. They were after mice. I bet the dumpster had mice in it, and the cats were after the mice. I bet money. That's what was really going, because he and I had this big discussion about, how different animals can get in dumpsters and so forth and so on. And then I realized, I went, wait a minute. It's so odd to even think of a mouse, but to have these 2 instances come up immediately. So I looked into this issue of what is a mouse and why would nature bring up a mouse. And what came back was that mice are very small, and they're very close to the ground, and they are amazingly capable, and they can do an amazingly broad variety of different activities, even though they're so small. So they have this ability to kind of diversify in a lot of different directions. And because they're small and near the ground, they see a lot of detail. So mice represent that ability to go in and decipher really fine details about whatever is going on in life. And as a result, be able, even as an individual, like I'm this big, but really I'm cosmic, right? But to be able to go in with that sense of honoring the details, so that even in my individuality, I am able to function at a cosmic level of creation, and to support and to uphold and to draw on resources and all the benefits that come along with the acceptance of oneself as cosmic.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful point. And it kind of brings me around to this this understanding of heart knowledge, as you're talking about the conscience and we mentioned intuition and the relationship between those. There's also this knowing of the heart that can begin to come online more and more and more. And this is sort of an innate knowledge that is universal and is non-conceptual, and it has a certainty to it. It has a degree of certainty to it. And this knowing of the heart enables us to take steps with certainty that we could never take on the basis of the mind, that we could never take on the basis of thought or reason or position or anything like that. And that comes down to this sort of willingness to see ourselves as cosmic, because that is a step, the backward step, it has been called, into the field of our own silence. And that the willingness to surrender the smaller sense of me for the larger sense of I, really comes from the grace of that knowing of the heart, and that willingness to give in to our greatness, and to see ourselves as we always are. So when that shines forth, what begins to take place is the body and mind now not being our only point of reference anymore. It is still here as a point of reference, but it's not our only point of reference, and it's not what we are. It's an aspect of what we are. Can begin to more clearly reflect that universal value and that cosmic totality in ways that it couldn't reflect when we felt that was all that we were.
Yes.
So although we can take steps to align, with certain principles, and we can certainly, be loving and kind and generous and patient to a certain degree. I mean, there's always going to be that which uh,
Those
is
moments.
those moments, we might
Those
say, right? Yeah, the residue of the
challenged.
unloving. Yeah, it's not a matter of either or, and I think that the loving and the kindness and the compassion includes to those moments within our experience. So when those things arise, then they're also met with love and understanding and so on and so forth. But that becomes much clearer and easier, we might say,
Mm,
when it's no longer me, and it's
yeah.
it's not confined to that, to being mine in the same way, you might say.
Maybe
So we
even
step,
especially in those moments.
yes,
Yeah.
especially in those moments. Exactly. That's where the love and the openness and the allowing is
Yeah, the
definitely.
value of kind of drawing on your deeper resources
Mhm.
to meet situations that are especially challenging, or that expand the individual perception and experience past its normal boundaries and
Mm.
limitations, which is what those moments are really all about, right? And so
Yes.
that's that time when it being, like you said, openness and, you know, having the confidence you can draw on uh, those sort of deeper, more profound resources like cosmic wisdom
Yeah.
and vast amounts of energy and the I would say the guidance for exactly what needs to purify and how in order to allow a person to navigate through those more difficult experiences and come out the other side shining. Like that royal path that we were
Yes.
talking about, because there's always multiple ways to get through a difficult situation.
Perfect.
Oh,
Yes.
Andrew, I have another story.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, so I learned this one when I was like in my 20s, I think, but someone told me this story that it was about a race, and there are three racers, and they all run as fast as they can. They get to the other end. It was a tie. It's a three-way tie. So afterwards, the announcer's like asking, well, so how did it go? So he asked racer number one, and racer number one says, oh, I really don't know. I mean, I just went out. It was just like a cloud of dust. I didn't see anything, but I worked my hardest and I got to the end. I won. And then the next person says, well, you know, it was really clear. I saw the goal. I saw where I was going. I went as fast as I could, and I got there. I got there perfect. And then the last racer has like some other vision of how it went. You know, well, I wasn't sure, and it looked like the other guy was ahead of me for a while, but then I finally caught up, and I finally got there at the end. You know, and so there's like these are three different visions of how we get from point A to point B. You know, and we have a choice. I think the moral of the story is we have a choice of how we want to run a race.
Hmm.
Do we just want to run it like blind? Like we don't know where we're going, we don't know what's happening, it's just a cloud of dust, you know, or do we want to run it like with it being a struggle the whole way? I'm doing it, but it's wearing on me. I feel like I died a little bit inside, you know, just to get through that race. Or do we want to just be just like, you know, just
Yeah.
I saw the goal and I was there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. And just to kind of clarify on that, it doesn't necessarily mean that in blindness, we don't think that we know where we're going. Because a lot of people think, oh, I know what I'm, doing with my life, and I know where I'm headed, and I know my direction. But
Right.
actually, there's a lot of blindness in that. And it's just what the intention underlying it, if it's for our own gain and our own self-image and all these different things, which these are not wrong things. We all have these tendencies within us to some degree, but they don't have to dominate our awareness. There's another possibility. So we look at this understanding of the highest potential and see that really it comes down to something more than the person, more than the personal. Our highest potential always has been for us to give ourselves to something beyond our limited sense of self. That's what the great masters have always told us throughout the centuries. It's without exception. It has always been that way.
It's so beautiful, Andrew.
And well,
Well,
and it's
we
go ahead.
suppose we defined highest potential then,
Yes, that
as divine union.
uh,
Like we all have individual goals, right? They're all
yes,
small goals. Like, oh, I'd like to have a good
sure.
job. I'd like to make a family, maybe nice house, something. But over and above all those, the underlying intention, the intention that feeds all those smaller intentions, is that intention of the divine
Yes.
to be completely expressed in
Yes.
this relative field,
Yeah.
and through
Yeah.
the physiology and through the mind and emotions and thoughts and words and
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, for divinity to realize itself within conscious awareness, within its own mind, for us to be
in the
clear
body, right?
in
Also,
the
like
body,
in all
as
of it,
not just a
the
small
whole
body,
package.
but as
Yeah,
an infinite body, as a cosmic body, as a divine
yeah,
body. There's, there's all these different layers and subtleties within our potential
right.
that that is here. It's here within all of us, and for particularly those that are drawn to listen to something such as this. So, in terms of defining our highest potential, on that level, it is the realization of our divinity realizing its truth, within its own field of cosmic light. Yeah.
Right.
And in that, then more clearly reflecting and revealing itself through the individuality, through the individuated appearance of the body and mind. So there's this understanding in the Buddhist tradition called the spontaneous perfection of meritorious qualities.
Ooh,
And it's said that all meritorious qualities are already inherent in the Buddha nature. They're already inherent in this field of light that is ourself. So it's not the spontaneous perfection of these qualities is not a matter of us doing something a certain way
right.
necessarily, but seeing ourselves as we are. And in seeing ourselves as we are more and more and more clearly, that beginning to express itself into the outward appearance in the way in which the body and mind is presenting itself within this field of activity. So that's the spontaneous perfection of these meritorious qualities, these qualities of virtue that are in alignment with those ideals and with the dharmic interconnectedness of life, because that knowledge, that knowledge is already in the self. It is the self. And through tuning into the knowledge of ourself, we tune into that knowledge of alignment and the possibilities of sort of spontaneously knowing
So
what is
Andrew,
appropriate. Yeah.
what I'm hearing from you is that on the path, as a person is moving through this path of self-development, then what it means is, rather than trying to go out and say, well, I should do this, I should, have a certain lifestyle or have a certain diet or follow these rules. I should follow all these rules in order to be, meritorious.
Yes.
But instead, what happens is the rules and regulations are there more like signposts,
Mm-hmm.
that as the consciousness evolves and the individual becomes more and more realized, they pass a signpost of like, oh, I see, it's really good to maintain like a regular rest routine,
Mm-hmm.
or it's really good to maintain a pure diet or something, rather than, like, in other words, the path isn't about trying to force oneself to follow certain rules. It's more about turning inside and self-developing, and then finding as you're going along, oh yes, and these are the rules. And it turns out, look, you just passed that signpost. Oh, look, now you
Yes.
passed the next one. Something like that. So
Yes. Yeah.
you use
There's a
guides, but you can't use them to force behavior.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they serve a certain function, and
Right.
but at a different point, they become a limitation. So it's
It become a
about
limitation if a person feels they have to like force
correct. Yeah,
themselves
it's
into
like
it in order to get enlightened.
yes, yes. I mean, you've met those that it's like oh, I'm trying to be sattvic, eat
There's
sattvic food,
training.
do sattvic things, do whatever. It's like that's such a constricting approach,
Yeah.
rather than this understanding of surrender and allowing and receiving, and recognizing that there's, it's not something we can just read in a book and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. These are the outlines and boom. That it's something that's custom fit. It's something that, at any given moment, today it could be, eat a little bit more of this, tomorrow eat a little bit less, whatever the case may be. And it's something that is supported. It's something that has that support, has that nurturing value, has that sense of direction, and comes also more and more with that knowing of the heart. So these steps are being taken in certainty. And that certainty is the foundation of the expression of truth, the embodiment of truth, the realization of truth. And that's what enables us to really tune into our highest potential, is being grounded and founded in that truth. Because otherwise we sort of are in that doubtful, place, and it's so focused on the particulars that it misses the general. Not to say that we can't appreciate the details, as your beautiful point was made earlier. That's very, very important. But that our ability to truly appreciate the details comes from our resting and seeing ourselves in the broadness of existence. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that definitely ties back into this idea that when the focus is to be in ever greater alignment with one's own divine nature, and the center of awareness is sort of, the awareness centers around like long-term goals, that long-term goal, then choices that are made are better aligned with setting your own self up for more success and more success and more success as you move into the future, rather than that sort of short-term sense of, I'm just going to do whatever right now. They say I should eat this kind of a diet. Okay, well, I'll eat that kind of a diet. That's kind of like very sort of short-term thinking. And that it's good to, when this, we could say, when we've integrated that cosmic perspective with the individual perspective. So some, I'd say, increase of stability and flexibility in the nervous system is required in order to support being able to be in the here and now, be very present, but then also be tuned into that cosmic long time frame, geological time frames, the really big ones. So that whatever's going on right now is also serving and supported by these bigger flows that are naturally happening throughout the entire cosmos. And that, I think that's perhaps that level of stability and adaptability of the nervous system is what also gives rise to a sense of inner peace and certainty, like, oh, that I am, where I am right now is just right.
Yes. Yeah. And that also goes through, different testing periods, we might say. So we sort of, in a way, refine that value. The self refines that value within itself through sort of testing itself. And it's almost like steel being forged. It's placed into a hot fire and heated, and then it's pulled out and placed on the whatever they call that thing, the anvil, and hammered, and then it's placed back in the cool water. I don't know exactly the order of the process, but I always think of that example when I'm sort of reflecting on this sort of testing, which is it's not from an out there to an in here, or like something. It's something that's evolutionary and supportive and in alignment. It doesn't necessarily mean that things are, that you feel like you're getting hit with a hammer. That don't mistake the analogy. It's the sense of sort of stretching and conforming and standing and walking and flowing with that. And that can include surrendering. So it's something that's very, very beautiful. And what comes out of that is a more and more of a rock solid foundation upon which the experience is standing. And it's not less and less is it subject to the constant sort of ebbs and flows of life. And because it has the certainty of that, it has that direction in place, it has that stability. And more as life supports the testing of that, more and more is there a deepening in that. So it's just this sort of constant deepening, constant uh, discovery of greater depths of willingness and certainty and truth.
Andrew, thank you. I feel that your words have been very validating for me, because I was noticing just this morning that it seems as if there are these three phases
Mm.
in this prayer. You're saying like the steel,
Yeah.
that there are these three phases, and surrender is part of that. I see how surrender fits in, that one of the phases is purification.
Mm-hmm.
One of the phases is integration.
Yep.
And one of the phases is expansion, going into the next, or nourishment. It goes into the next level like that. And surrender is really required in all three.
Yes.
Because during the purification phase, one is letting go of some conditioning or some beliefs or some value that has been limiting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that ability to kind of surrender, to just go, okay, well, I don't need that thing anymore. I'm just going to let it go where it needs to go. And in the integration process, there's definitely the integration. What I found in the energy healing is the integration works most proficiently when one allows, when the awareness gets a little bit deeper than the analysis and synthesis and thinking words level, but just feeling. There's a feeling of integration. There's a feeling of like coming together and wholeness and totality, becoming more and more stabilized in the system. And that also requires letting go a little bit of the superficial patterning of mental process. And then in the expansion, like nourishing for expansion level, it's the same thing. Anytime we're expanding, we're moving into new territory. And that means, surrendering to some experience that's different. There's a lot of, at that point, what I was noticing this morning was that all three can happen at once. And when the system was stable enough so that all three are happening all the time, it's like they're three in one, they're kind of rolling around each other like that, that then it's like the being is just evolving without hindrance, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, it is just like that. It's a perpetual flow of
Process. Yeah.
surrender. Yeah, exactly. And
Right. Because at every step, the guiding influence is one's highest divine nature. That's what's sort of running that show. So it's like, for me, it feels like it's like a little program that's running in the background, sort of. That, I'm making lunch, or sitting here chatting with Andrew, or, whatever. I'm meeting with people here and there, making music, whatever. But in the background, there's this 3-in-1 aspect of expression of the potential of the nervous system to do these things all at the same time. This purification is happening, the integration is happening, and the expansion is happening. And so that becomes like a facet, or it like flavors the different behaviors as they're taking place, and supports every experience, whether it's defined as pleasant or it's defined as unpleasant. It allows every experience to rise to its potential as an evolutionary experience. And so at that point, whether it's a pleasant or unpleasant is kind of not as important. And it loses that definition, loses a lot of importance at that point, because it's just all evolution.
That's right, because it's about the process, and it's such a beautiful point. I have a similar understanding that I use in the teaching of surfacing, which is comparable to purification. So there's this surfacing of unresolved energy, impressions, emotional flavors, so on and so forth. And in that surfacing, there's like a constant surfacing taking place, we might say, of impressions at least. It's not, surfacing doesn't have negative connotations, just like purification doesn't have negative connotations. It is just what it is. So with the understanding of surfacing, there's also this understanding of there's two possible directions that the surfacing can be sort of moving in, you might say, quote unquote. One direction would be the direction of unconscious re-identification and recondensation and reaccumulation of more impressions and more sort of karmic looping.
Right.
And that would be like the direction of avidya. So I call that the direction of recondensation, re-identification. And it's more of a direction based in ignorance, but there's also a direction based in knowledge, the direction of vidya, we might say, is a way of looking at it. And that direction has to do with the evaporation of the surfacing and the transcendence of the self-limiting nature of whatever is surfacing, we might say, or the conclusions that arise within the surfacing. And the surfacing is serving transcendence. It's serving evaporation. It's serving the unpacking and unwinding and undoing of those things that have been left undone. Yeah. That we have not fully
What would you
processed
say
out.
would be the difference? Like if a person wants to do when impressions come,
Yes.
when surfacing comes,
Mm-hmm.
is there like a procedure or technology that you would suggest for how a person would navigate through that experience so that, you get what I
Yeah,
mean?
of course. There's several different things. I mean, for many that will be watching this, probably
I mean, I have my own ideas, but
Sure, yeah.
I'd love to hear your ideas.
Okay, my ideas are what I see as being valuable in that context is, first of all, having the understanding that that is what is appearing on the surface, we could say, to
That's what
some
I was
degree.
going to say too. That would be my first thing too. It'd be just,
And
it's like a little shift in the mind when it
it
comes
is.
up, rather than sort of recoiling and thinking, oh God, oh, I hated it when I did. Oh, that was such a cringy moment in my life,
Yeah.
but realize, oh no, this memory surfacing because I'm finally letting it go. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. And when you have that understanding, it's so freeing. Just, I've seen so many that they did, once they just were introduced to the concept of surfacing or purification, it's just like, oh, this is just surfacing. It's no longer a big thing that's happening to me. And the sense of getting lost in the story of it can be easily sort of undone or undercut, we might say, just through that basic recognition. But once that's in place, there, is the possibility of the conscious experiencing aligning with the evaporative direction of that surfacing,
Mhm.
the surfacing moving in the directionless direction of transcendence more effectively, more efficiently.
Right.
And so a huge part of what I suggest is the intelligence of attentive allowing. And this is something that you're always sort of putting forth in your webinars, and Divija talks about a lot, and all three of us talk about it quite frequently. It's so valuable. Its value is really immeasurable, we might say, within the
Shift,
context.
the attention shifts so that one's awareness is more just on how it feels, how that dissolving experience is coming forth.
Yes.
You feel it, you allow it, just
Yeah.
by like kind of moving out of the little mind's dialogue about it and
Uh-huh.
going down to, but what is that releasing feeling feel like? And just when the attention goes there, it helps to facilitate the release.
Exactly. And it's not that there's not going to be resistance, because there's a conditioned resistance to arising. So, but even in the midst of that resistance, when we see resistance as resistance, that seeing automatically opens up the possibility for releasing the resistance. So it's not a matter of what is arising, but our response to it. And there is typically a layered response. So we could say that something arises that is seen to be unspiritual or unpleasant or whatever the case may be. Okay, so it's arising, and in that there is a movement to push it away, to try to control it. And that arises automatically. Well, let's say that someone has heard on top of that that it's not helpful to try to control it. So then they see, excuse me, that there was a trying to control it, and then there is an aversion or a sense of, oh no, I just tried to control it. So you see how sticky it gets in just 1 second.
Yeah, I see that. It's like
And that can go on, right?
And oh, I'm a bad person because I whatever.
Sure. So it's really, as we are able to sort of tune into that silent observing and recognize that crystallization of surfacing from the space of our silence, then no matter if it's a triple layering, a quadruple layering of resistance, whatever the case may be, it's all able to be relaxed and released. And what that looks like is just with the attention opening into what's arising, opening into the surfacing, and being willing to let go of the discriminations and the judgments and the conclusions about whatever is appearing. And as you sort of relax into that, then more and more is there a sense that that material is being evaporated in a certain sense. I like that word because I look at the infinite ocean of conscious awareness as sort of a self-condensating, self-evaporating presentation of forms and phenomena, we might say. So as we feel that, we tune into that willingness to open in and allow and sense that evaporation. Sometimes it might feel like there's a completion, that something's sort of rising and completing. Sometimes it might feel like something just needs to stay and just be held for a while without the need to get rid of it. Right. And so we might end up just having something there, just gently processing out all day,
Right.
But we're not trying to control it. We're not trying to make it go away. There's a willingness to be with the isness of existence. And as we really begin to tune into that way of life, so many wonderful things begin to unfold. Not that we're necessarily in it for the wonderful things, because that could potentially be like, I've been doing this for a month and I'm not getting the results or whatever, and frustration. It's really for its own sake. It's for its own sake. Just because this is the highest possibility. This is the highest option. I don't need to have a reward for it,
Right. Well, I was saying it can run kind of like a program in the background that colors or flavors every little thing.
Yes.
Every little experience. And it raises even the most mundane little experience up to some level of, cosmic value.
It does. Yeah. And as that continues to unfold, we move through what appear to be the more personal, sort of individualized presentations of impressions. And we then begin to tune in to the ancestral and have that, a refined value of
like those responses. Those are very conditioned over the course of many generations of, something surfacing.
Exactly. And then it just becomes, and as you so beautifully put, it then sort of just turns into this constancy, this sameness of being in a certain sense that is recognized to be cosmic, even in the minutest of details, even in what appears to be the sort of most superficial, small little releasing and surrendering. There's a recognition that it's of cosmic value and that it translates into the whole field of activity.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It rolls out to the ends of the universe.
Yes.
It rolls through us. It rolls through rather than getting stuck.
That's right. Yeah. There's already enough of that there. We got plenty to work with. No worries there.
Yeah.
But it's coming up. It's coming up, and that's what we're seeing. On the on the
Individually,
screen.
collectively.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And, I just feel as if it's such a gift
Mm,
to be able to navigate through even the worst of situations in a way that results in even deeper, more complete, integrated awareness of one's totality,
mm,
one's divine nature. It's such a beautiful gift. It's like, with all my heart, I wish the world, the whole world, like everyone could just get this. If they could get this one thing, it would save so much agony.
mm.
So we're going on, and so, it's definitely my heartfelt desire, Andrew, and thank you for your beautiful infinity that, as Dorothy says it, Andrew stabilizes, boom, infinity. And so that it has that ability, like an open channel, to stretch out and to touch, many, many people, so that so many people can see that there is this very beautiful, like I mentioned before, royal path
Mm,
to the experience of human existence
yeah.
as divine existence.
Yeah.
And all the little things, even the worst of things, we've had certain events, public events happening in the last days, and more threatening ahead, and so forth. And so, there's no lack of opportunities to practice. So, so
Exactly.
it's like, I really encourage everybody to, use these moments as opportunities to put this process into motion, to activate this process for yourself. But also, if you just happen to turn on the news and see something that's like, oh no, so you can still, put it into practice, even in the way you process whatever it is you're seeing that's coming through the collective as well.
Yeah.
And that as we do this, it really, really helps everybody. It helps. It helps. We, at this time in history, we don't really have a social construct well developed to measure the effect, to measure how well that helps. But so I can only say it based on circumstantial evidence, and based on my own experience. But there will come a time, there
Yeah.
will come a time where the funding will be there for the scientists to step forward and to actually create some nice studies that are really, double blind and triple blind or whatever, and,
Yeah.
with lots and lots of people, so that we can see that this isn't just an idea, but it's actually quite a real thing.
Sure. And even as you describe that, it's like that definitely probably will come, but the there's an instrument that's here right now called the heart that can measure it, can see it, can know it, can feel it, can be it in that certainty.
Yes.
And if we have to be convinced, or like if we have to have proof in order for us to to be aligned with truth, then something's off in the first place. It's
Yeah, no, but also, Andrew, I have to, this is good. I
yeah,
have a
I like
slightly
it too.
different
Come on.
perspective. So yeah, that is that I feel that there are various measures of truth, and
Yes.
subjective measure is one absolutely valid measure of truth.
Yes.
But objective measure of truth is also another valid measure of truth.
Very
And
true.
another valid measure of truth is the measure through time and space.
Mm-hmm.
If something's true, it
Yes.
should be true for me within myself, like I know it's true, but it should also be measurably true. And it should also be just as true for someone who lived in China 5,000 years ago as it is for someone who lives in America 2,000 years from now, or even on another planet, or whatever. It needs to be right. And it's not to say that if I experience it as my subjective truth, then that's not good enough. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we're gifted in this relative field of creation
Yes.
with different methodologies for
Mhm.
testing truth. And that because of that, it's kind of cool. Like some people are natural scientists and they want to figure that. They want to do like that's their dharma, you
Yes.
know. For
Yes.
for Andrew and for Dorothy, it's like, well, yeah, of course, you know, I don't need the scientist to tell me because I know, but it's kind of, but I think I'm just bringing that point up that there are different ways of like appreciating and recognizing and honoring the truth.
Yes, of course. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the scientific exploration of it. I think that that's beautiful and appropriate and
Yeah,
very much, a part of perhaps even a tipping point for a certain portion of the population in terms of
exactly.
moving in
Exactly.
a certain
Yeah.
direction, because a lot of people sort of resonate with clinical observational evidence and those kinds of things, and that sort of gives them a motivation to move in a certain direction. And
Yeah.
that is perfectly in alignment for where it's at. At the same time, those that are watching this, I feel, have enough sort
Oh,
of
yes.
openness and potential
Yes.
to really, to feel the truth of the potential of that level of allowing and healing, and to find out, to experiment and to find out. That's another scientific approach, we could say, is some healthy experimentation within the realm of allowing and
Yeah,
releasing
within one's own self, because
within
that
one's own
same
self.
process of kind of working with it and
Yes.
sort of drilling in and seeing what's really in there and bouncing off of one's own inner knowing, is this really true? Is it really true for me? Like Andrew said it was true, Dorothy said it was true, but is it like for me, is it really true?
Yes. Yes. And that's the most, yeah, of course, that's the most valuable, is to find out for ourselves. And that's really the only possibility. Even when we are supported by other things, at the end of the day, we have to
Absolutely.
find out for ourselves. We have to verify, the truth of what is being presented. And so, as we have explored today in terms of the fulfillment of our highest potential, what has been spoken throughout the ages, centuries, uh, come and gone, is the possibility of human life being born into the unborn field of silence, and seeing itself as it is, and in that also beginning to express that peace and that harmony and that coherence and that blissfulness in the world.
Yes.
and and
One lives
and
in a state of fulfillment.
exactly. See, that's it. And there's this in the, and you'll probably be able to help me with this, in the Vedic tradition. There are these four goals of life that are spoken about. We've been speaking a little bit about goals, and dharma, kama, artha, and what's the last one?
I don't remember, but I know there are four of them. And let's
One
see,
of them is like pleasure,
right, that's
enjoyment.
comma.
Yep, kama.
Comma is pleasure.
um,
Artha
is
is,
wealth.
oh, is wealth,
I
right.
think so. Yeah, yeah. Well,
And dharma is right action.
yes,
Right?
yes.
And then the last one,
Moksha.
moksha, realization.
Well, liberation, realization. How do we forget that one? So you see,
Good job, Andrew.
these four, us together,
Yeah.
uh, these four goals of life, sort of, we might say, are not goals in the typical Western understanding of the word. It's not like,
Right.
oh, this is something that I'm going to get or achieve or strive for in that context. They're what we might say are sort of innate desires, that innate impulses, innate movements that are present in the human heart, that have the potential to be fulfilled. And in their fulfillment, as a body of expression, as a sort of combination, represent this highest potential that we've been speaking about. So it's not just moksha, it's not just liberation, it's wealth, which doesn't necessarily mean monetary wealth. It's
Like resource. All the
resources,
resources
it's
you need to
pleasure, enjoyment,
manifest.
it's purpose, it's direction, it's all of these things coming together. And it has been said that the Divine Mother, divinity herself, effortlessly grants these four goals of life to those that are surrendered to her. And of course, she is what we are. So in that surrendering to deeper and deeper truths of our own divinity, those four goals of life spontaneously begin to actualize. And that kind of aligns with the spontaneous perfection of the meritorious qualities.
Right.
That
I was
is,
thinking that too.
yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. So you sort of come full circle
Yeah.
at this point. Beautiful. Anyway, I'd like to say to everybody listening, we love to hear from you.
Yeah.
So if any of the ideas that Andrew and I have brought up today are interesting or exciting to you, please comment and like below and let us know what you think and what some of your experiences are, because this is how we're able to cultivate presentations that are even more rich and luscious and interesting and useful to all of you guys. And, the reason Andrew and I are doing this is because it's such a privilege and a joy to connect with the larger community of high-minded, high-frequency, and evolved individuals in our world together. As we continue to do these types of activities together, meeting together, we're able to structure a foundation for the collective consciousness of our world to navigate these bigger challenges in a much more graceful way. So, this isn't just Dorothy and Andrew sort of spouting around. I mean, there's a larger intention here,
Yes.
which is that we're aiming toward this bigger goal, which is a legacy to humanity that we're all creating together. This isn't just Dorothy and Andrew creating this. No, we need all of us to do it, because through our coordinated efforts and the unification of our minds and our thinking, we're able to create a foundation on the level of consciousness that even helps those individuals who could care less about evolution or spirituality. It helps them because they're the ones that are out there, like in the streets, doing the hard work, which is, putting themselves out there. So, I mean, not that we also go and do things, but the point is that we create a context for everyone to act in better alignment with life's highest goals. And so that even people who don't care or don't know about them will spontaneously find that that's what feels best. And so that's what we want to do. We want to create a condition that makes it really easy, like diving. You just go to the edge of the pool and you sort of take the right angle, and then gravity takes you into the water. So if gravity is there and the pool is there and the sunshine is there, you can do it. So we can just, like, we're working from the level of consciousness. So we're working from nature's switchboard. We're working from the behind the scenes, you could say, to create the context so that everybody just naturally, spontaneously, easily, effortlessly is able to make good decisions and move from their hearts, as Andrew said. And if we have everybody doing this, things would be all right. Things would be better. You'll see. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a very powerful and beautiful time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.